Right. So probably I was speaking to Brother Delron in the lunch break, and I think I got a little clarification about his position, which I don't know if he wants to say something about it before we go
Hey,
in.
hey, how you doing? All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I'm back here again. I'm gonna start with the scripture. It says Luke 9:62 says, "And Jesus said unto him, No man having put his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom of God." And I know this morning some things were said, and I'm not looking back at the things that I said. I think I'm gonna push forward, and we should push forward and let it uh, see how it matures and how it goes and what it yields. I was explaining to Brother David that earlier too, and I'm gonna start with this. One thing I have realized is one of the biggest problems that we have in amongst us as humans, and when we come to believe, is fear, and that fear hinder us from seeing. I got a little somebody mute. Just mute everyone there, David. All right, hey, thanks. And because of fear, it hinders us from opening up to other perspectives and other things, and it also leads to a defense that is put up, causing could lead to also misinterpretation of what someone is trying to say, and it and that would then cause discord because we get defensive and we think that, "Oh, I can't believe he said that, and I can't believe what is he saying? Is he speaking apostasy?" And then we want to ostracize. And the love, because with fear, love is when fear has laid seed and laid root, then the love goes out the door, and then no longer love, and we then treat each other in a kind of way that is not what we profess to believe. And so with that, I just want us to be cautious with that, as we even entertain the topic that is on the table. Um, this morning I made a presentation is talking about the true name. I was basically building upon some things that was upon my heart, and it's definitely upon my heart, and I won't take it back because that's how the situation that I am in, and I could speak from my interaction. I think that's also too. I must also make note that when I'm speaking from things that I have experienced, how I would like in relaying this message, obstacles that I have met, um, things that I had to do to overcome, um, also um, things that were presented to me that I had to research and look up. It's the same thing that was that I faced when I was looking at the Trinity. I got a lot of backlash. It was nothing new. The same spirit was coming from people who were opposed to it, who didn't even want to just take a look at it. Just say, hey, take a look and see if it bear fruit. And I know in that it caused it caused me to get separated from a lot of my family and my friends, and I got put basically in hell. And it's downhill from there. It's downhill from there. But all in all, that wasn't my intention today. I was not speaking from the grounds of knowing that this was presented to or in this group, or Brother Clayton was aware of it. I had no idea of none of these things. And I think also that's also good because I'm not coming from a biased position. My position was just straight, genuinely from my heart, speaking from some evidence that I have been weighing and research that I've been doing also. And in that, I had a sense of the atmosphere that, oh, what is he saying? And a lot of defense. The fear went up. A lot of fear light bulbs went up because all of a sudden this guy must have been saying something that we heard before. And I'll give you an experience. When I first moved to New York, I was attending a small church called Pearl Harbor SDA Church. And around this time, I was researching the the Trinity and the truth about the Most High. And in doing the research, I was there, and some younger couple. We started. The family there. They befriended us. They brought us up, invited us over for lunch. Me and my family, and we met. We fellowship with them. They were inviting us to everything, and we were nice family there. One time we went by the house for lunch, and the topic came up, and about the Trinity, and so I'm not gonna sit there and have it be a Trinity. I'm gonna profess what I know to be true. So in love, professing the truth and everything, and then I realized the atmosphere changed, and they were like, "Oh, he's saying the same thing this guy was saying, behind my back," type of thing, and I'm like, and totally off guard there, but I was observing the way how they were treating me, how it changed, and from that day, that family never called us or invited us again. From that day, the church whole thing shift, and it's not until I did some a young guy in the church was telling me, go ahead. A young guy in the church was telling me, another young couple, my daughter again, another young couple we were befriending, who remained cool with us. They were like, "Oh yeah, about 3 months ago, a guy came into the church doing the same thing, and they disfellowshipped him." And it was so interesting that when I connected with Brother David on this, and when we talked about Michael, Brother David, and the guy actually know Brother David too, and I think he does some printing up here, if I'm not sure, but I never got to really meet him in person. But it's to see that atmosphere was there already, so the fear kicked in, and then they are saying. So from that point on, the attitude changed, and I just stopped attending the church. I'm not gonna waste my time dealing with that kind of thing, because you're just being presenting something, and we all have actually faced situations like that. And so what I'm here to say is that don't let fear dictate good reasoning. Don't let fear dictate your thought. We're not putting fear, we're not putting limits on the Most High. I'm not here to say God operate on one name only. This is His name. If you don't pronounce this name right, these minute details that I hear going about. That's not. I never mentioned anything. I never even pronounced the name today. I'm not here to say that. Well, this is the way. Then is a legalistic mindset that has to go with it. That's not what I'm saying. I never said anything like referring to that. In fact, I have realized that since I have came into the truth about God, I have understand that there's freedom, right? There's freedom in the Son, and who the Son set free is free indeed. So why would someone be free? They want to go back into captivity. Doesn't make any sense to me. Anything that I research, if it's leading me into legalism and captivity, I am running from it. I'm not going to put myself into that situation. And so with that, I just want to clarify that on the table as the questions and the concerns arise, that the position that I am speaking of is not that maybe the position it was presented to you of old. My approach is in general is it could be used as it allows me, having this understanding allows me to be adaptable in different environments that I find myself in personally, because I'm in an environment where I interact with young people, young black people per se, and they are on a search for identity. Young black people wanting to find their purpose, and so what they resort to returning to Africa and spiritualism and ancestral worship, because they don't want to acknowledge your my they want to acknowledge Christianity because of the bloodstain Christianity has. They don't want to acknowledge white Jesus or even black Jesus or imagery. These are real issues that I deal with, and real issues that are on my table. And so how better do I do it? There must be a way in which they could be reached. And when I see that, okay, a black brother is telling me about Yahweh, Yahshua, and I'm like, okay, cool. You don't want to call him? He's not Jesus. All right, we could go with Yahshua. Let's do it. Let's talk. Yahshua is the Son of God, right? He's the Son of the Most High. Don't say God, Elohim. All right, let's go with Elohim. I'm adapting to my situation so I could spread the gospel, so we all could come into the unity and have the fellowship in the Father. But it's not about forcing individuals to or pushing an ideology to have people go this one way and this one way only. That's then me going against what I said at the beginning, where I will never put limits on the Most High. I will never put limits on the Most High. But with my getting of wisdom, I must get understanding. And in getting that understanding, I must learn how to relate to people, how to adapt. And it's something that I'm learning. I'm young. I'm not seasoned and well spoken like my brother David. I can't bring things up. I'm a very straight speak. I speak straight. I speak simple, and I like to interact with individuals. And so I am not. I don't see any harm in such a thing. I think it's if we black it out as it doesn't have any relevance, then there could be a problem. Because I think if we blanket on thing that is not relevant or it doesn't have a purpose or use, then it could be a problem. And the same go vice versa. If they're going to say, right? So I think that there's no harm in it. And when we really sit down and think about it, what's so wrong in check? I mean, what harm could be done in this? And I understand the defense that people might have from past experiences or from seeing individuals and friends who have jumped on a bandwagon and ignorantly went out there. Obviously, they didn't get understanding and end up legalistic, doing feast days and treaties and sacrifices and doing all these different things and falling into that bracket. That 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 bracket of people who just get things and go far with it. And I understand that. And but that I'm speaking from that position of, like I said, we get understanding. I understand that. But that does not negate the fact or negate that will not negate that this might have some importance in it as far as knowing who God is. So if this is like return, they may know the unchurched. We must also know. Let's know. And let's go on that journey and not put up our walls and perimeters of defense as it's some ostracize, as it's some abominable doctrine when we're just simply speaking about the name of the Father, the name of the Son, and it's just simple things. And what stood out to me in my search was the historical things that was on it. If it's historically some historical dirt that is going on, then it's the same thing with the Trinity. There's a lot of historical dirt on the Trinity. That's what moved me from the Trinity. Had I looked into the Trinity and I saw that there was nothing happening in the Council of Nicaea, I would have been worshiping my Trinity. You couldn't tell me anything different, but I could show it underlined. I could show it underlined, right? And so if I could show it underlined where there was some things that occurred that then just raise a little eyebrow, raise some light, that there's like that. There's nothing wrong in just addressing that situation. And that's what I was presenting here. As to me, it's a great tool that I've used that caused me to adapt and interact with my with brothers and sisters and share from a different perspective, knowing and knowing in my heart where I stand, because I'm part of the family of God. I am not afraid of legalism. I am not afraid of legalism. Legalism has no bond on me. I have no fear in my heart of any of these things, none at all. I live a free life. I live a free life, and so as that's what I want to share. I open the floor right now, and I hope I was able to make that plain to where I stand. All right.
Okay, brother Delron. I see you, brother Tony. I see you. Let me just lay down an outline of how we're going to do it.
Yes, but I feel perfect for that.
The thing is, we can't. We don't have a system here where you can raise your hand. So what I'm going to say is that I'm going to identify you by people unmuting their mics, and I'll allow you to speak. I have something to say, but I'm going to just maybe I should speak first because I think first of all, we should understand certain principles before we start getting into details. But I'll let Brother Tony go ahead. He unmuted his microphone, and then probably I'll speak after him. Right, Brother Tony?
Yeah, this would be very quick. I just want to ask him a question. Are you familiar with the guy that does thoughts, camera, and action on YouTube, provoking thought?
No.
Oh, you're not. Okay. Okay, because I thought you was probably familiar with that because he I think it's on the lines that you're saying that the where they're like the original Hebrew Israelites, something like that.
No, as he said this morning, Brother Tony,
Uh,
he's not promoting what the Hebrew Israelites believe, and he's not in that line of.
okay,
Mhm. I know they have become very popular recently, but let me just
right.
give a little uh, general talk before anybody else talks. Um, like I said, I've been familiar with the subject of what is referred to as the holy names for a long time, 20 years or more. But the real, what I want us to understand before we say anything is that there are several different approaches to the topic. And I think it is important because at one extreme end, you have people who say that it is apostasy, it is worshiping a pagan god if you actually use anything other than the actual Hebrew names. They say that the name of God is Yahweh. Some go further, they say it is Yahuwah. Some go further and they say it is Yahweh. It expresses something which is that nobody knows the exact pronunciation because what people today try to do is rebuild the sound based on how they think the Hebrews might have said it. Because as Delran pointed out this morning, the Hebrews stopped using the name for thousands of years because they concluded the name was too holy to be pronounced. So they substituted a word for the actual name. And so after a while, nobody actually knows what the vowels are. You should understand that in the Hebrew language, there are no vowels, they are just consonants. So it's just YHWH. So what vowels go between? In English, we have to have vowels to understand the pronunciation. Nobody knows what vowels went in between the consonants. So they're really trying to kind of rebuild a name based on supposition. That is why you have so many possible ways of saying the name. When we come to the New Testament, what we see is that the New Testament is written in Greek. In Greek, instead of the words Yahweh and Yahshua or Yahashua, what we have are Greek equivalents. Now, I'm talking about the people who really promote this on what I consider to be an extreme level. They say it is impossible for Jesus and the apostles to have used these pagan names. So they say the New Testament must have been written in Hebrew originally, because they believe that the Greek language is so full of pagan sounds that God would not have used the Greek language. And so there is no place in the world where anybody has ever found any evidence of a Hebrew New Testament. There's no evidence, but these brethren say there must have been one. Why? Because God could not have used pagan names. So you see, they reach a conclusion based on their presupposition, and they say it must have been so. But there's no evidence at all in the entire world that there was ever a Hebrew New Testament. And you will understand if the New Testament was written in Greek, which is what all the evidence suggests, then it means that the names that we have in the New Testament, these are the names that were used. Instead of Yahashua, you had Jesus. Instead of Mashiach, you had Messiah, and instead of and Christ, they used the Greek equivalents. So there's that historical background. These are the people who are very extreme about it, and they say, so you have to use the actual Hebrew names, and some of them go even further, and they say that I know some of these brethren who have decided that you need to learn Hebrew because Hebrew is the sacred language. They go from the sacred name to the sacred language, and they believe that Hebrew is the language that is actually spoken in heaven. Now, this is one extreme. On the other hand, you have the brethren who are not so extreme and they don't go to this place, but they say, God said this is my name. And it was his way of identifying himself as opposed to the pagan gods. So they say when you look at Chemosh and Milcom and Ashtoreth and all the other heathen gods, you could know that you were a worshiper of the true God because he had a name, and the name was Yahweh or whatever. And so it's important that we use the name because there are still many pagan gods. And when you use the name, they know which God you are speaking about. Then there are those brethren who say, this is not the issue at all. The issue is that when I use the word Yahweh, I feel like I am closer to God. For my own personal worship purposes, using this name makes me feel like I'm interacting with a person. And I feel like if I want to interact with God, the closer I can come to how he originally gave his name, the closer I feel that I am to God. So it's a personal thing, and this is what I want to do. And I don't feel that what I'm saying is for everybody. It's my own personal relationship with God. So you have probably these three approaches to the subject. And then I think Delron was actually presenting a fourth idea where he was saying that in witnessing to people, in interacting with people, he found that using the name Yahweh or Yahuwah actually helped him to communicate better because he seems to be in a community where people of black people who are a lot of foolishness is going on in the black community. Let me say that straight up. A lot of foolishness, right? A lot of black people rejecting Christianity and going to Islam and going to black Hebrew Israelites and going back to their African roots and going back to African religions because they say Christianity is a white man's religion. And well, I won't even tell you my opinion on this. You know my opinion. I don't even have to say anything, right? My race is irrelevant when it comes to Christianity. That is me. But I don't expect everybody to have that same kind of awareness, especially people who are not Christians and who have never met Christ. So what Delron is saying is that for him, it's helpful in reaching these kind of people. And if he's saying this is for him, and he finds this helpful, you know, that's another point of view that we definitely could consider. But so we have these four approaches, and for me, it depends on how we approach it, because I can accept a couple of these approaches. A couple of them I consider to be very harmful, damaging to Christianity, and deeply steeped in legalism. All right, now let me explain about my perspective on legalism. I'm going to stop and open up the floor in a moment. But let me just say explain what I say about legalism. All right. Everybody who is a part of this fellowship knows that I understand legalism to be not just something to do with the way we understand the law. It is to do with how we understand life. It is with how we understand God, how we approach the way we understand our religion and our God. And let me explain what I mean. The fundamental problem in legalism is that we hear words instead of principles. I think if all of you think about what I just said, you will recognize this is what we have been talking about week after week after week. It is looking beyond words to understand principles. And because this is such a subject that is so close to my heart, I have a nose that is very sensitive in this regard, so that if there is a sniff of legalism, I tend to draw back, because for me legalism is something that distorts God Himself. Fundamentally, it distorts God, and I know it is possible to be in defending the name of God to be distorting the character of God. It's possible to do this because I heard somebody ask the question one time. I heard this discussion on this program we have in Jamaica called Religious Hard Talk. I heard the host ask the question because, as I said, it's an old argument. There was somebody there, I think one of these Hebrew Israelites, and he said to the person, "Come, are you trying to tell me that Jehovah or Yahweh is such a nitpicking person that if you call him, if you actually call him by the wrong name, he's offended and he's upset with you? Is he so petty? And even though I might not have said it the way he said it, I agree with him. Because as you know, when you call a person's name, I've known people get offended because you mispronounce their name. And they're not people that I can respect. They are people I consider to be petty and childish, right? Because the pronunciation of a name, my name is David, and the only thing it is good for is that when you make the sound, I turn around and I acknowledge you. That's what the name is for. So my children call me Daddy. My wife calls me Dear. My flesh and blood brothers call me Vid. When I was going to school, they called me Bloods because I had so many bloods. I was proud to tell everybody how many bloods I have. They called me Bloods. And people that I'm not so friendly with, they call me Mr. Clayton. I have several titles and I don't care which one you use. The only thing is, the one that you use tells me whether you're my family or you're my friend or you're an acquaintance, because the thing is, some of them are a little more endearing. If you say dear, I think you're my wife or somebody in a similar category, right? If you say daddy, I cannot put you in a certain category because that's so that is where the sound you make might be important to me. Okay, I was showing Delron something that is interesting. Okay, this is let me see. Yeah, I hope you can see. This is my book. The good news is better than you think. And if you look at the title, you'll think that's crazy. That's actually Serbian, the Serbian language. Now, if you look down at the bottom, let me see if I can. You probably can't see it, but I hope you can, because the name there is Dejvidklejeton. That's my name in the Serbian language, and it looks nothing like what you know to be my actual name. And I don't care. Okay, they published the book, and there is a YouTube channel that they have put up with my sermons, and all of the sermons they have this title on it, right? The word they use and the sound they make, it depends on their language. And what is important is that when they use this sound, people know who they are talking about. So when I talk about legalism, I'm talking about Christians insisting that this particular sound is the appropriate sound and the sound that must be used. For me, this is forgetting the principle behind a name and focusing on the sound. Like God Almighty could be concerned about the sound you make when you talk to Him. What this does to me, I mean, the people I know who are offended when you use the wrong sound, they're either the people who lack intelligence or they are mad people. Okay, I know they like to call mad people names and they get upset and they throw stones. The boys like to tease. You have one or two mad people on the street. The boys tease them. Katie, turkey leg. Say, go call your mother, and they get upset and they rage away. But it's people who are lacking in intelligence. Sensible people don't get upset because you mispronounce name, because a name is simply a way of focusing your conversation. It's a way of focusing the sound that you make. It's a way of focusing your conversation. So if I say, you know, I love you and I care about you, you want to know, am I speaking to Leon? Am I speaking to Sister Marcia, Delran, George? I focus the statement by saying, Leon, you know, I love you. So I focus the statement and I direct it to you by using a term that you know means you. If I'm in the house and I say, sweetheart, can I have a mango? My son does not respond. My daughter might, but usually it's my wife who will respond, because I've focused my statement by addressing her, by saying sweetheart, the term that I use for her. I could have said Jen, it would have meant the same. I could have said wife, it would have meant the same. The purpose of a name is to focus communication and to focus interaction. That's the purpose of a name as far as the word or the sound is concerned, in my understanding. Therefore, this is why when there is a policy, if there's a policy made about the sound, that it has to be this particular sound. If it's made a policy, I have an issue with it. If somebody says, this is what I feel most comfortable referring to God, this is comfortable for me, I find it draws me to Him. Wonderful. I would be stupid to object to that. I would be stupid. So it's not an issue with the name. It's not an issue with somebody referring to God. It's not an issue with saying this was the way, this was the sound that God gave to them originally. This is the name of God. That's not an issue. But where I would have an issue is if anybody says it is necessary for us as Christians to do it this particular way. It's necessary for our spiritual well-being to actually use this word. Or if we say it's a mark of apostasy to not use this word, or to use the English equivalent. Those are the things that I have an objection to where this subject is concerned, because it means that what such a person would be saying that the rest of us must be bent to conform to that particular pronunciation. And that is what I consider legalism. It's legalism. It's focusing on the form and not understanding the meaning behind the name. I don't know if in heaven the angels say Yahweh. I have my doubts because I don't think the Hebrew language is a perfect language. And I know Yahweh is the Hebrew way of saying the self-existent one. From my understanding of the Hebrew language, the word Yahweh means the self-existent one. If I say in English, oh, self-existent one, I'm actually saying the same thing, but I'm using a different sound. It's just that the sound is different, but the meaning is the same. So this is why I think that if the emphasis becomes more on the sound, because that's what it is, it's a sound, it's not the name, it's a sound. Because a name signifies two things. It signifies the sound that you are responding to, and it signifies what does this word mean. In Hebrew languages, in the Hebrew language and in many languages, these names really have an underlying meaning. Like, for example, in Hebrew, the word David meant beloved. All right? The word Yahweh meant the self-existent one. The word Yahshua meant Jehovah is salvation. Yahweh is salvation. So the names had meanings. And so when you use the word in the Bible times, you're actually giving a message. The angel said of Jesus, thou shalt call his name Jesus, Yahshua, Yahshua, whatever it was. Or it might have been Jesus because it's Greek. It might have been in Greek. Why? Because he will save his people from their sins. The name was connected to the job that he would get. So whatever the word means, the people that he lived among, in that context, in that nation, in that culture, when they heard the name, they understood he was to be the savior. And that was the point of the name. They were to understand that he was somebody who would save his people from their sins. And that's the meaning of the name. And that's the point of the name. Other than that, he need not have been named Jesus because there were many Jesuses in Jerusalem at that time. That's why they made a distinction and they referred to him as Jesus the Messiah, or Jesus the Christ, or Jesus the Anointed One. It was a way of setting him apart from the other Jesuses. But you see, the point of the name and the title was to identify the work that he would do. And this is why many times in the Bible, when a person was called to a certain job by God, his name changed. A different job or a different portfolio. Jesus says to Peter, thou art Simon, thou shalt be called Peter. You shall be called a stone. He wasn't just giving him a different sound. He was saying, the job I have for you, you are going to be a foundation in my church. I'm going to call you Peter. You're going to be a stone. So anyway, that's my perspective overall on it. I mean, there is more, but I'm not going to do all the talking this evening because I understand that there are people who want to make other comments, and I want to open it up so we can get a broad spectrum of thoughts. But I'm just going to ask that in everything we do, as Delron said, it's important that we operate as Christian brothers and sisters. We're brothers and sisters, and many times when we have a disagreement, we look at it the wrong way and we approach it the wrong way. I've done that myself at times, and I regret it. We have built on antagonism instead of simply communication. I'm disappointed when we can't agree, and I hope that won't happen this evening. But even if we disagree, I don't agree with my wife herself on some things. So it doesn't mean that we are enemies if we don't agree, you know. But I'm going to stop and ask if there's anybody else who would like to say something, ask something like the
I have something to say.
yes, go ahead.
Um, isn't you know I I had a bad connection this morning, so I didn't hear 100% of what that was saying, but I got a gist of what his what his research was about in terms of the name of God. You know, do you know his name? Do you know his son's name? And he dived into that. What you were saying, Brother David, is also very applicable, and I want to know if it does not seem as if we're moving the goalpost or we're shifting the lines, the boundaries in which we consider some things important and some things not. The same thing you were talking about in terms of, does it really matter to God if, what we call him? Yes, he has a very holy name that probably angels call him, and his son call him while he's there with him and stuff like that. But, you know, us knowing what that name and calling him that name, it doesn't matter. We could call him daddy, we could call him, papa, we could call him Abba, father, you know, it doesn't matter to him as long as we have that relationship with him. And that brings me to think about, all right, there are some of those who truly love me, and look at, the Spirit of Christ as a person. Does it really matter? No. I mean, God could be looking at that and saying, yes, I have a relationship with this person. This person loves me, and this person is somewhat calling the Spirit a person, but it doesn't matter. The person loves me. So, you know, it's, I'm a little bit confused now, because this has opened up the fact that we make it a big deal. We make the Trinity a big deal, and is God making it a big deal for the person who truly loves him and truly worships him and truly, is, want to serve him for the rest of their lives? I've always been told that, you know, don't condemn the Catholics because there are people worshiping him in spirit and truth that truly believe that, what they believe is what they believe, and they're going to heaven based on that kind of stuff. And I've always been told that. So, I'm a little bit confused now, because we make the Trinity a big deal, but couldn't we say, Brother David and Delron, that the same unimportance that we put to call what we call Jesus is the same unimportance we should put in the Trinity?
I could go ahead. I think you have a very good question there, Brother Cliff, and that's a question that I had on my heart too. This morning when I gave the presentation, I don't know if you heard the part. I was talking about the gross darkness, right? Gross darkness that is encompassing people, the darkness that's upon the earth. And a lot of times we think that, there's some darkness to come, as I was raised, being taught that maybe there's some darkness to come, but not knowing that as I mature and get into understanding, the darkness already exists. It already exists, and it's only through how I become like climatized so to the evil around me that it doesn't even seem to be evil no more. It's and now I'm looking for something worse than that to happen, right? I only say that to say this in reference to your question, that I agree with you in the position that, it it is there some weight that needs to be put upon it, because I put weight upon the Trinity because of but when I look back and I see the details in the pudding, I realize it was mixed with some real corrupt ingredients, right? And as I was looking at this topic, what stood out to me was that a similar thing has arise with the same, is similar to the Trinity has arise there, where the Jews thought the name of the Most High was too holy to be said, so they won't even pronounce the written. They won't sound it out because it's too holy to be said. And then it went undercover and was hidden. So when I look at the track record of it, the ingredients is toxic for me, and I think it runs hand in hand with the same. It balances with the same thing as the Trinity, in my understanding. So that's an approach that I look at it. That when I look at it, and I think that there is some importance that needs to be had, because at the end of the day, there's importance to your name as an individual. There's importance to my name as an individual. And I gave that example as I was buying a house and I had to sign documents. When it came to some certain things, I have to give my real name. I can't use my play name. I can't. My name then applies and needs to be correct. With that though, we cannot make it a legal issue. I mean legal issue, like a legalistic issue where people are then it's a must for salvation. It's a must because the salvation that we have is in His Son, and that's why we have to understand the salvation is in His Son, and this is the key. And He is the key. Although we come into the light to understand that, okay, we have been robbed from His name, I don't think that it should then be a legal issue, a legalistic issue that causes us to move away from the focus, which is in the Son, in His Son, right? And it's good to have clarity on these issues, and and that's one thing I agree. It's good to have clarity because it's then gives us opportunity to operate in truth, worship Him in spirit and in truth, and that's the key. The key is that we are functioning in truth. All right, that's my piece on that question.
All
Brother
right.
David, can I make a comment?
Yeah, just a moment. I see three people. CO, I don't know who this is. Carla 08, and then I see Charles, and then I see Brother Arthur. I am going to respond, and then we'll take those three persons in that order. Carla 08, if your mic is unmuted, then there's Charles, my brother Charles, and then there's Brother Arthur. So I'm going to take you in that order as soon as I've made my response to what Brother Cliff said. Brother Cliff, you asked a very important question. I'm going to mute everybody again because I'm getting a little feedback. You can unmute your mics in that order after I've made my presentation. Yeah, so Brother Cliff asked a very important question, because if we make a big issue about the Trinity, isn't it also an issue about whether or not we're using the wrong title or the wrong name? And it's very important, because I've often thought to myself that many of our people have made the doctrine of the Godhead a legalistic issue. So I agree with you wholeheartedly, Cliff. If our understanding of the truth about God is approached from a legalistic perspective, just because it is, then we make an issue about it. It's a waste of time. Why are we making a fuss about whether God is one or three if it's just a doctrine? And one of the problems I had when I became involved with this movement was that this was exactly how many people were treating the subject of the Godhead. For them, it was simply a matter of being technically correct. And that for me is nonsense. If your religion is about being technically correct, you're wasting time. Which is why I personally have emphasized so much the consequences of what we believe about God. The consequences. If you think the Spirit of God is a third being as opposed to the Spirit of Jesus Christ, you cannot comprehend the doctrine of the two Adams. You cannot understand the full implications of it. Neither can you accept it. Your false idea creates obstructions and stumbling blocks in your mind that you cannot understand. There is a block that you cannot go further, because the Spirit of God, if it's a third person, then it is not Christ who lives in us. And therefore, the doctrine of Christ being the second Adam, that we receive the life of Christ, the idea of life by inheritance becomes a false doctrine, or just a token idea that has no practical benefit. So what I'm saying, Brother Cliff, is that the doctrine about who God is cannot be simply an idea that we say, let's accept this because we are getting away from paganism. That's an exercise that it's a wasted exercise. We come to the truth about God because it changes our relationship to the gospel, to God, to reality, to life. You yourself have seen how completely our understanding of God and salvation changes in very real practical ways because we come to understand the truth about God. So it seems like it's similar, but it's not this. It's not similar. This is why I asked the question: what benefit is there in pronouncing the word the right way? Because remember, we all agree that the name of God applies most completely to the character of God. Everybody in here agrees with that. So that is not in question. What is in question is whether or not we need to call God, I would say, with the right pronunciation. The pronunciation is the issue because you have different variations of the pronunciation. In English, we say Jehovah, and we say Jesus. In Greek, they would have said Jesus, and in Hebrew, they would have said Yahshua, and perhaps to be more precise, they might have said Yehashua. They're all transliterations of the same sound. So it's really a question of pronunciation. That's what the issue is about, pronunciation. So what I'm saying is, my issue is, can somebody demonstrate that the pronunciation of the word changes my relationship to salvation or my relationship to God? Because we already agree, if it can help somebody else, if it can open a door for me to be a witness to people, then it's fine. I agree with this. And Delron was making that point, and I don't think anybody would disagree. Paul says, I become all things to all men that I might by all means save some, right? If you want to be circumcised and even shave your head, that you can bless some people, Paul did it. But we would never say it's necessary in terms of our relationship with God. So what we do to share the gospel can be helpful. But what I'm asking is, what I don't see and what I object to is the idea that the actual pronunciation is fundamentally necessary to my relationship with God, or that it in some way contributes to that relationship. All right, so that would be my response to what you said, Brother Cliff. Now, caller 8, I don't know who that is, but you know who you are. Can you go ahead? Brother Raymond, you are number 4. Caller number 8, who is that? And somebody has, you don't know who you are, but you were unmuted. You are not, oh, it's number 3. Is it number 3? It might be number 3, and I said 8. But anyway, you know who you were. If you're not quite ready to speak or I made a mistake, then it's Charles. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for it. All right, first of all, you know my views on the Trinity, so I won't get into that discussion at all. That is irrelevant to what we're talking about now. But I feel that we make unnecessary complications in our relationship with Christ by bringing in things that don't tie in with any instruction that we have from God. If we look at the life of Christ, I have no recollection of reading any reference to the Father as anything but the Father. And the prayer he instructed us to pray was our Father, no name was called. So I think we're adding to the instruction that we have from Christ things that really are unimportant to him. If we say there's one God, then any other name that is called other uh, than God can only refer to the one God. All those other gods do not exist. So when we speak to God or speak to the Father with the understanding of this, we are speaking only to the one and only true God. And if Christ's instructions were, when he said, when you pray, pray like this, he didn't call a name. He said, our Father. And then his invitation to us is to become sons and daughters of God. And that's the relationship that he's encouraging. When we go back now to something that is in ancient history, that was never a part of God's intention for how we should relate to him, we're actually creating distance between ourselves and God, which contradicts the kind of relationship that Christ is encouraging. So I'm saying if someone can find me an instruction from Jesus or from God Himself saying that we ought to be calling Him by a particular name, then I will accept that premise. But as far as I could read in the Bible, I can only find one instruction from Jesus which said, when you pray, pray like this: Our Father, which art in heaven. No reference to any name. So I'm a little puzzled as to how we have managed to weave into a relationship the requirement that we should have a name for God that we should call Him. In fact, in the Old Testament, several names were attributed to Him: Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Nisi, Jehovah or Deliverer. And so I really am puzzled as to how this has become woven into the requirement for a relationship with God. I would love to hear.
All right, and you might be addressing one of the perspectives because, to be fair, I'm not settled on whether or not anybody is saying it's necessary to the relationship. So I don't want to misrepresent anybody, but I agree with what you're saying. You know, he was not only called Jehovah Nissi, Jehovah Shalom, Jehovah, but he was also called Adonai. He was also called Elohim. He was given, and even at one place he was even called Baal, which is strange, but Baal means Lord, and he actually referred to himself by that name at one time, which is kind of revealing as well. But thank you for the thought, Charles. Brother Arthur, and then Brother Raymond.
Right. One of the things I recognize, as Brother mentioned about, Brother Cliff mentioned about the Trinity and the name. I don't really think the significance of both are the same. I don't think the weight of the issues relative to the Trinity is the same as that of the name. Reason being, what are the fruitages of accepting the Trinity for arguments? If you look at the consequences and the fruitages of holding to that doctrine, it is repulsive, it is ugly, it is detestable. It paints God as a liar and Christ also. Now, these are not to be taken as minor issues. These are major fundamental pillars of the Christian, of the believer's faith. Now, there was a time when Paul met some folks. They never knew it was a thing upon Mars Hill. They didn't even know the name, but they were worshiping this deity. And he says, to the unknown God, who you whatever, not knowing his name, quote unquote, is not really of such magnitude that one ought to say you cannot you gotta pay so much attention to that. But the Trinity is a different kettle of fish altogether. You cannot accept the Trinity and accept the atonement. It brings the atonement into disrepute. It brings God's character into disrepute. It messes up a multitude of things. And so therefore it cannot be weighted with on the same scale with the name of our Heavenly Father. So I can understand some of the perspective. Okay, you want to gain audience with a certain set of people because you want to get access and communicate to them on a certain level. Fine. But the two issues are absolutely night and day apart. Who is it that we worship? When we think about coming to worship God, the devil says he would be worshipped, and he tried it in heaven. He was not successful. He came down here, and to me, he has gained a foothold into the Christian church through the Trinity. Now, to me, when the subject matter is raised in circles, there's an animosity that comes from those who advocate to this Trinitarian idea. And the question I often ask, why? It is a satanic spirit. Yeah? If I don't know my Heavenly Father's name, no big deal. When I pray, I uses the name as Yahuwah or Yeshua. but it's not a big deal. I don't take no issue with it, and I'm not gonna repudiate someone or think that person um is otherwise
Me
if they
turn it
don't
down.
prove
I
it.
can hear it all the way.
Right, Sister Lorena,
Yeah,
I see that you have something to say after Brother Raymond, but yeah, you have to mute for the time being because it's
I
kind of,
apologize for that. Yes.
it's okay.
yeah. So basically, I'm saying is I don't think you can wait the Trinity subject along with the name, the name issue on the same scale. They're absolutely two different weight. One is like featherweight, and one is heavyweight. So that's my little ounce on the subject.
Okay, okay, Brother Arthur, thank you. Brother Ray, go ahead.
Yeah, the most important thing that comes to my mind is it a salvific issue of knowing the names? And I say absolutely not, because when Moses was at the bush and God conveyed to him a message to give to the people, Moses says, when I go to them, what should I say? What should I say? What's your name? He says, you know what? Just tell them I am that I am. So then you go to Revelation, and I think it's talking about the Son, Revelation 12, talks about he has a name that only himself, he knows that name. So how do we make this connection? I don't know how people make a connection from here to the belief in the Trinity or whatever. Because if you go to the Trinity, you try to combine this with the name calling, it doesn't make sense because you have the Father, you have the Son, and then if you want to put another name to that, it'll be Beelzebub. Three gods in one, the God of good and the God of evil. That's the Trinity. So this is where this name thing comes into mind, that it is not salvific. Now, when we say God the Almighty, we are referring to a very special person, only one God Almighty. He knows his name. And I think that when we go to heaven, we're going to be surprised, because if we don't know the name of his son that only his son knows, which is in Revelation 12, imagine the name of God. See, because the son is not more important to God. So I believe that this name issue is not salvific unless, like David Clayton said, and I believe it, Brother Charles, unless you are talking to a particular person about a particular subject and a particular God, and you want them to know which God you're talking about in that case, and you're always going to mention the Almighty, which is the same as if you call them, the regular name in the Hebrew or in Greek or whatever. That's just my opinion.
All right, thank you, Brother Ray. I see you, Sister Diana, and I think Sister Iris also. So Sister Lorena, then Sister Diane, then Sister Iris, and then I will come in again.
Thank you, Brother Clayton. You made, Brother Clayton, you made two very good points in that whatever Brother Cohen was saying, if he could refer it, keep it by, to it's what his relationship with God, him and his relationship, and what the Holy Spirit is moving him to say and do with the people he's trying to reach. But I think that names, as far as names are concerned, God is looking at our hearts and not necessarily what I believe what we're calling him. If we're calling him to, because people use the name of God even to curse, even as a curse when they're talking, they said, oh my God, and all kinds of things. So I think he can read our thoughts, and he knows our hearts, and he knows what we mean when we're uttering or we're addressing him. And I think that's most important, at least to me, is that he can read our thoughts and our hearts, and he knows what we mean when we are addressing him. So I think, look at Naaman the leopard. When he went back to his king, he had to bow before an idol because the king was an idolater. But he told God, forgive me, I have to do this, but you know my heart and you know where I stand.
Mhm.
Even though he wasn't uttering a name, but God knew his heart and his actions were not important at that time because God knew that he had his heart already. So I think this is what we have to look at as well. It's not the name and how you pronounce it. What about people who don't know how to pronounce that name? Does that mean they're not addressing the right God? I think it's in the heart, and that we need to look at more than how we're pronouncing something or what language we're using or even what name we're using.
All right, thank you, Sister Lorena. And of course, in everything that everybody is saying, as I said, there are four different, maybe more, four basic approaches to the subject. So some people are addressing one perspective, some are addressing another perspective, some are looking in a very general sense. So I don't think everything that is being said is focused particularly at what Brother Delron shared. All right, because I know that I don't think he's saying absolutely that it's a matter of salvation, and some people do, and I'm pretty sure he's not saying that. Sister Diane, go ahead.
All right, can you hear me? Because my internet's bad. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you now.
Oh, okay. I had told Brother Delron that I agreed with him because when I looked at the matter, I came up with the same conclusion. I didn't know God the Father. I really didn't. And the Trinity issue opened up a whole can of worms for me. Well, wait a minute. He really does have a father. He really is the true God. Now well, who is he? What is his name? I know he used that verse, but I'm saying that was a question I had as a result of this search. So it wasn't, I didn't take the salvational issue that some people are taking. I don't even know why we get all upset just having this discussion. It's amazing to me that people get pricked as a result of the conversation. I have a name, you have a name. It doesn't just mean it has a meaning. That's irrelevant to the meaning of my name. It's a Greek name that has a meaning, but the meaning of it is irrelevant. But you still know that you have to call me by my name, regardless of what the meaning is. And I've lived overseas and I've gone overseas. I don't let people call me, and my name is Diane. I can't answer you from whatever you're going to say in another name. You might not have a problem with that. I do, but I don't mind that they mess up the pronunciation, because even in English, people will see the way my name is spelled and they'll call me Deanne. And I still respond, because even if you mess up the pronunciation, I know that you're trying to say me, okay? And when I was a child, I knew my parents' name, even though I called them mommy and daddy. There was no way I was going to say to the teacher or somebody who asked me, what is your parents' name? And I was going to say mommy and daddy. Those are titles. God and Lord are titles. My mom and dad's name was Lucille and John Pope. I had to know that. Even if I didn't call them that, I still needed to know that. And for me personally, when I came across this, that's what it did for me. I was able to distinguish the Father and the Son now, because it was blurred lines studying the Bible and seeing the Father with, and understanding the Trinity. It was just Jesus. You know, I was praying. I did the outline, the Lord's Prayer, but I was like, if you hear Trinitarians, they'll start off by saying Our Father, but they're talking to Jesus. And then they'll talk about Jesus, and then they'll say in your name. Well, if I'm talking to you, how am I going to say it's in your name? But you know, that's because it's such a blurry line. And then I also thought, well, in Revelation, it says the seal of God. This is something that I know Adventists take shot at. And I know that Bill Hughes particularly did this. He touched on everything, and the people who have talk about the name, feast keepers, non-Trinity, every what they call offshoots imaginable, he addressed. And then he said they have the nerve to think that the seal of God is the Father's name. Wait a minute. The Revelation says the seal of God is the Father's name. It is Adventists who say it's the Sabbath, but yet he said that, and it took so much weight with the group, and they didn't even bother to go research that the Bible says in the Revelation that the seal of God has the Father's name, Jesus' new name. Okay, so that means we're not calling him Jesus, because that means he's going to have another name. Jesus' new name in the New Jerusalem. That's what the scripture said, but he poo-pooed that. And the audience said, okay. So those were the kind of things that made me look at it. And for me, like I said, it helped me to now distinguish, because if I just say God, guess what? Satan is called God. And if I always say Jesus, guess what? Them rappers and them heathens out there also say Jesus. And I know they're not talking about the same Jesus I'm talking about. They can't be, because of the way they live. So there has to be a distinction. So for me, when I learned it about this, and I figured it couldn't be what those Jews say, because it couldn't be what they say, because the name is there almost 7,000 times. They say 7,000 times it was changed from whatever the name was, those 4 Hebrew letters, to Lord, okay, which means Baal, okay? Change from, and he said he didn't want to be called by that name any longer, okay? So that means that they were calling him Lord and Adonai, which is also the same, and he wasn't going to be called by that name any longer. So I just thought his presentation was what he learned. I've learned it. I never share it with anybody unless they ask. And I didn't take away from his presentation that he was saying, now everybody has to do it, and if you don't, you're going to go. So I wouldn't even take that approach. It's just comforting to know who my daddy is and what his name is. That's my personal take on it.
Okay, Sister Diane, thank you.
David, my
I,
line of question.
I see Wayne and I see Charles. So you can mute, and then Sister Iris, and then caller 13. Caller 13. I don't know who that is. I saw you just unmute. So it's in this order. Sister
Peter.
Iris or Brother
I've
Peter.
been
All
up
right.
my hand for the past how long?
Sorry,
You've
Brother
been
Ian.
asking for the longest time.
Sorry, Brother Ian. Let me put you after Brother Peter, okay? Because I just saw you. So it's in this order. Sister Iris, then me, then Brother Wayne, then Charles, then Peter, then Ian, okay? Sister Iris, go ahead.
Okay, hello everyone. This is a very interesting topic. I took a world religion class in college, and when they got to Judaism, they actually mentioned the name of Yahweh. And I was so surprised because they said Yahweh was at the burning bush, Moses, and you know how that scripture goes. And then it actually says, when he asks, what will I say your name is? He says, I am that I am. And the way it was explained to me was that Yahweh means I am. Yahweh is a Hebrew name. He was, seems like he was the God of the Hebrews first. Brother Delron, if this allows you to bridge a gap, to reach out to someone for the purpose of giving them truth and giving them a relationship with the Father and the Son and the Spirit of God, God bless you. But I will say I also was invited to a Bible study, and this is where it got a little sticky. I started going there, and it was the Institute of Divine Metaphysical Research. And they actually talked about the name, no other name, God's many, Lord's many, but then they linked it to salvation. And when I stopped going, she said, well, you're going to be lost. And I said, no, I'm not. So it's his name. And I noticed, Brother David, you use it sometime. But the last thing I'll say is when I talked to this lady, she used to come visit my mother. And I asked her, she was Jewish. I said to her, I said, do you know the name? And I said, Joshua. She said, Yeshua was a good man. He was a prophet. And that's how a lot of Jews refer to Jesus. But I guess that's all. There's one other thing I wanted to say, but it just kind of slipped my mind. But just thank you for listening. And I will say this: that when the time that I studied with these people, what it added to me was the ability to, it brought me closer to the Lord. I could just close my eyes and to block everything out and just pray to him and fellowship with him. So everything the Lord has led me to has blessed me in a different way. And I just thank God that he's led me here.
Okay. Thank you, Sister Iris.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. I think I am next, and I'm going to reinforce my reservations. I'm going to reinforce it because I think sometimes, I mean, it's such a complex argument because there are a few different perspectives on the subject. There are a few different reasons why people think it's good to use the name, tending from it's helpful to the idea that it's an absolute necessity. We have a spectrum of ideas, so it's difficult to discuss it because people are addressing different things. But here's my observation. In the religion that God has helped me to become involved in, as I said earlier on, there is a tendency to move from what is legalistic to the greater meaning. Jesus said that those who worship God should worship in spirit and in truth. You know, the woman of Samaria, yes, she was concerned about the right place of worship, because God said over and over that the place where he would put his name was Jerusalem. And she was concerned that God had put his name, first of all, in that mountain before the name was moved to Jerusalem. He said his name specifically. And Jesus says, look, woman, you're a legalist. He doesn't say this, but this is what he's implying. He's saying, God is spirit, and those who worship must worship in spirit and in truth. And what does he mean by this? He means that you can't lock God into a box. You can't lock God into a location. You can't lock God into a denomination, because God is spirit. He's bigger than our little ideas. And I would say he would have said the same thing. You can't lock God into a name, because the name Yahweh is an Old Testament concept of God. I'm putting that to you. Yahweh is an Old Testament concept of God. I actually encountered some brethren recently who say that Yahweh was Satan masquerading as God. And why do they say this? He says, because the things that Yahweh commanded in the Old Testament are so cruel and heartless. They are not like Jesus. They are not like the God we come to know. And so this person concluded that in the Old Testament, Yahweh was Satan pretending to be God. And even though I scoff at that idea, but I understand why the person said it. Because the image of God presented in the name of Yahweh is absolutely not the image that we have today. Yahweh is the one who tells you to stone people who are breaking the Sabbath. Yahweh is the one who tells you that a man who touches the ark, he drops dead on the spot. Yahweh is associated with a legalistic form of religion. And what I'm saying is that the name signifies the character. So if somebody is going to insist on the actual sound or the name Yahweh, Yahuwah, whatever, it seems to me you should also associate it with the concepts associated with that sound. Now, let me show you something interesting. Dwight Nelson, the Adventist pastor, he presented a sermon in which he said that Yahweh and Allah are the same God. I don't know if any of you heard this, or you heard this sermon. Sister Diane here, and she has heard. But she says Yahweh and Allah are the same God. Now, the reason why, Brother I see you, so let me put you down next. The reason why I objected to that is because, to be honest, I understand where he's coming from, okay? The Muslim idea of God came from the Abrahamic faith, the one God. The Jewish idea of God came from the Abrahamic God. The Muslims came from the line of Abraham through Ishmael. The Jews came from the line of Abraham through Isaac. They both had the same origin, and so they both ended up with a similar kind of religion. The God of Islam and the God of the Old Testament is very similar. Now, it's not kosher for me to say this because I believe in the God of the Old Testament, but I try to understand what he was doing. But the God of the Old Testament slaughters his enemies, commits acts of genocide against those who stand against him. He is merciless to those who fall into transgression. There's a reason. It's a part of the plan of what is happening in the Old Testament. But if you just take him at his name, this is the kind of God you end up with. And you could justifiably say that Allah and Yahweh are the same kind of characters. We understand because we have Jesus. Jesus came in to show us the true face of Yahweh. So when the Bible says that God has a different name or a new name, if it actually says this, which I don't think it actually says about the Father, but we actually have a new name for the Father. Jesus, as a matter of fact, Jesus says we should call him Father. He actually gave us a new name. When Jesus says in John chapter 17 and verse 6, I have manifested your name unto the men that you gave me out of the world. I have manifested your name. Which name did he reveal to these disciples? I ask you all to consider that very carefully. Which name did Jesus manifest to the disciples? Because that is the name by which we should call the Father. What is the name Jesus gave them? Somebody made a point earlier on. I don't remember who, but the person said, and I agree wholeheartedly, you can look at the New Testament and find, I think, can you find one place where Jesus says, my Father's name is, and then he gives a name? Can you find any such place? I mean, even if we say that the New Testament was written in Hebrew, in the Hebrew language, you'd still find the phrase, my Father's name is, and then they might have changed the word and you get a different name. But he never actually said to anybody, my Father's name is. He didn't. He never gave them any name apart from telling them that they should refer to God as our Father. And yet at the end he says, I have manifested your name. So I asked you, what name did he manifest to his disciples? And I would answer, he never manifested a word or a sound. He manifested a character. That's the name he manifested. And he strengthened the point that we all understand that the name of God is, in the new covenant understanding, the character of God. We are new covenant believers. This is my strong point. I mean, I'm saying it a little forcefully because that's how I talk, right? But I'm not trying to say that anybody has to accept my perspective. But what I'm saying is that my understanding is that in the New Testament, God emphasizes principles, not sounds and places and words and rules. I mean, all of this. When we begin to focus on the sound, we are trending towards the old covenant. This is my real concern. This is if you want to know my real concern in this, my brothers and sisters who are listening to me, if you want to know my real concern, is that there are certain ideas that lead us in that direction towards the old covenant. And the old covenant is basically, you know, when somebody comes to me and says, David, you have a few little figurines in your house, and I think these figurines attract evil spirits. I am not disrespectful. I respect their opinion. But in my mind, I don't give much credence to those things. I don't like to have figurines and those little nonsense around the house. But there are certain things that were true in the old covenant, right? What's her name? Jacob's wife took the gods and hid them in a box under her thing, right? Hid them in a box. The images and the gods in the old covenant, these things were closely associated with that form of worship. In the new covenant, we are dealing with spiritual things. We are dealing with ideas and spiritual realities, not the forms, not the forms. I don't know if you can understand what I'm saying. So my point is, it's not just this. I would take the same position where the Trinity is concerned if I did not see that the Trinity is not, the Trinity idea is not an idea that deals with forms. There are fundamental, basic truths concerning salvation that you can never understand, appreciate, nor experience. Experience. Christianity is about life and experience. You cannot experience these things if you have a false idea about God. So it absolutely is very important what we understand about God. But I'm saying that in this particular thing, it seems to me it fits into the category of one of those things that deal with an external thing, not an internal thing. And the focus on the external is to push us in the direction of the old covenant. That's what I think. Anyway, I've said a great deal, and other people want to talk. So it's Wayne, then Charles, then Peter, then Ian, then Brother Ayayi, in that order.
Okay, thank you very much. Some of my thoughts were already expressed, especially by Sister Irene anyway. But nevertheless, what I wanted to add was, Iris, thank you. What I wanted to add was that I noticed that when the stress comes on about the name of God, as many have been saying, it seems like it's mainly Old Testament time folks. But not only that, I find that, well, you can correct me here, that it also was for those who weren't God-believing people, to some extent. Let me show what I mean. When Moses was to go back to see Pharaoh, Moses says, challenge the Lord, what shall I tell him? What shall I say your name is? It seemed like it was to satisfy the Pharaoh, right? I don't think it was to satisfy Moses to verify what his name was or is, right? And I find then with my brother's presentation, then in light of those who are not truly God-fearing, maybe it may benefit them. If you were to say, if they ask, so what's your God's name? And then I say to the individual that my God name is I am that I am, for the benefit of that individual. But as a child of God, going forward, I know how I approach my Father, as has been said. And as Paul says it in Romans, I address him as Father, Abba Father. And is to call him by a name is not too relevant to him as being his child, right? My children are not, they approach me, yes, daddy. They don't necessarily approach me using my name, and I don't see them as not my children because they don't call me by my name, but they do show their respect to me and accept who I am to them. But I'm their father. But for the outsider, they saying my name to the outsider who by my name might be helpful to that outsider. That's one. The other thing I was thinking to, which might sound a little bit simplistic, but nevertheless, if was a person who has a lisp tongue, can't speak clearly and not able, no matter how that person tries, will never be able to pronounce the name properly, the way it is said to be pronounced. I mean, God is so childish to say, well, listen, I'm not going to listen to your prayer because you can't call my name properly. It doesn't sound like my God. So those are the little thoughts I popped through my head. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Wayne. Yes, and somebody might even be unable to speak as well, might be dumb. Anyway, Charles, go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. And I share some of those thoughts, especially the one about being family. You refer to him as father. And I was the one who made a point earlier about Jesus never having referred to him by any name other than father, and having invited us to, in fact, refer to him as father. But then there's another problem because according to John, Jesus was the creator who manifested in the Old Testament. Because John says in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was God, and without him was not anything made that was made. So, in fact, although we know that the Father and the Son are separate individuals, in fact, Jesus was actually the one who manifested in the Old Testament. And in fact, he made that point when he said in John 8:58, 59, somewhere about, before Abraham was born, I am. And then he speaks of him, I am the bread of life, I am the light of the world, I am the good shepherd, I am the way, the truth, and the life, connecting the concept of I am to who Jesus is today. So I'm saying this emphasis on the name actually misses the point, which is the role of Jesus in our life, the role of the Father in our life as well. And I think this is the more important point. And so if we get caught up in the name, whose name are we giving? Is it the name that Jesus called himself in the Old Testament, or is it the name, the true name, whatever that name might be, of the Father? And there another problem is created right there. So I think it is best to do what Jesus said. When you pray, pray like this: Our Father which art in heaven. I guess I understand the point about wanting to identify who this person is, this being that you're referencing. And if you say I am, is it the Father or the Son that you're talking about? So really, I wouldn't get caught up on a name. I would just simply identify the God that I serve by his character, which I think is God's intent for me anyway.
We're not hearing
Yeah,
you, David.
you're
Not
muted.
hearing.
No,
Your
me.
mic.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I was saying it's a good point that Jesus is the same person who was speaking as Yahweh in the Old Testament, even though he was speaking as God, and it was not widely known that there was a Father and a Son. But it's a good point and appreciate it. So, Brother Peter, you're up next.
Okay, I'd like you to put up 1 Corinthians 14 and verse 2 on the screen for my brother David. And
You want to just read it, Brother Peter? Because I
pardon
need to watch this. I need to look to see who else puts up their hand, and if I change the screen, I can't see.
me? Say that again. Say that again. You
I'm
need to
saying,
what?
I'm saying, can you just read the verse because I
Okay,
need to
okay,
see
okay.
who else
All
puts
right,
up
I
his
will.
hand.
I will. 1 Corinthians 14 verse 2 said, He that speaketh in an unknown tongue speaketh not unto men, but unto God. For no man understandeth him. Orbit in the spirit he speaketh mysteries. Is this a legitimate way of talking to God? I'm asking because Paul seemed to think that it's a legitimate way of talking to God, speaking in a spirit, in a manner that no man can understand. God himself understands. So if we are caught up in pronouncing a particular way the God's name, I have a problem with this text. Because this text said I can be talking to God and no man that is hearing me can understand what I'm saying. So if they can't understand what I'm saying, it therefore, in my mind, means that pronunciation is not really important to God.
All right.
Hello?
Thank you, Brother
Hello,
Pete.
David?
Elron,
It is
we
me,
don't.
down again now.
Yeah,
Huh?
I hear your voice, Delron, but we don't see you.
Oh, yeah, I'm transferred to my phone because I got to make move, but I'm still on though.
All right.
And I just want to come in here too, because I realized that also. I just want to reiterate my point that I'm making. And I think maybe that could get the conversation to sway in a more healthier direction, and we don't be repetitive on some things like pronunciation is not the issue, is not what's on the table. Saying it right, we know it's not salvific. These things are not actually what I said. I know you also highlighted that too also. So then let's make the conversation more of, does God has the, what is his name? Like Solomon asked, what is his name and what is his son's name? Right? And in understanding that we're not approaching it like, oh, I need to know his name, or I'm gone, I need to pronounce his name right, or then woe is me. But what I'm approaching it is, I think what Sister Deanne touched on really eloquently is the fact that it does good to know God. The Father has a name, and the Son has a name, and this is his name. Oh, that's great. And acknowledging that helps in my witness, helps in my interaction with people if that arises up. But it's not something that I am going to be, it's not something that is legalistic, it's not something that's supposed to spark fear in anyone. You know, I think we are sounding like the people who don't want to say the name because the name was too holy. They're putting fear in it. But then it's supposed to be joyous to know that there's a name. You know, Jesus said that he said in Luke, what verse was that? Luke 10:20. Luke 10:20 says, "Rejoice that your names are written in the book of life." Right? What name is written in the book of life? When I'm speaking to someone, I don't say, "Oh, my nickname Flea is written in the book of life." My name, Delron, is written in the book of life. I have to rejoice that my name is in the book of life. And that's okay. I have a name, and God don't write another name in there unless he gives me a new name and write my new name in the book of life. But I don't see that there. You see, he told them, rejoice that your name are written in the book of life. And so I have a name. God acknowledge that he has a name. We address that. I mean, I acknowledge that he has a name. Okay, fine and dine. I don't think that it's something that should spark a defense. I just think it just supposed. I don't think it's something that should also spark a defense from anyone, because I understand. I do understand all the cautions and yellow tapes that are on the table because of past instances that interactions that everyone has been through. Mind you, I do understand that, but even in that, that should not then put up a wall on anyone to just acknowledge that the Father has a name. That should not put up cause us to think differently that the Son has a name, and it doesn't. It's regular. Everybody else has a name. We are naming didn't start with us. Naming start with him when he created us. He named man. He called man, and then man called woman. So I don't see why it's such a I do understand the bitterness in the mouth, especially if we're going to be, and it will get repetitive as you go over, saying the same thing. Everyone is saying pronunciation, but I never said anything about pronunciation. I didn't know there was an issue about how you pronounce the name either until it started here also. So I just want to just encourage that we operate. It's okay, like to encourage that we know that if God has a name, he has a name, and that's okay. That's fine. You might run up on an instance where you were dealing with an individual who acknowledges that, and you'll be able to relate. Okay, yeah, that's true. All right, we can have a nice discussion. We can have a reason, and that's beneficial to everyone. That's what.
All right, Delron, let me just balance it a little bit to be fair, because as you appeal for fairness, I think I should also be fair to the rest of us, because what we know is that everybody in this room understands that we call God by the name of Jehovah, sometimes Yahweh. I think everybody knows this. Everybody understands. There's nobody who believes that Jehovah or Yahweh is not the name that God told the Israelites to call him by. So I think we're in agreement with this. But I think what is being said, I mean, what you presented this morning, it suggests that there is more to just knowing that this is how God is referred to. It seems that you were saying it is important that there's something important, some importance attached to it. So it is your emphasis on this importance that is eliciting this response. So it's like everybody's saying, or the other people are saying, why is this important? And they're trying to look at the possibility of what are you saying that makes this important. They're looking at the possibilities and they're trying to respond to that. So it's not that they're saying God doesn't have a name, or that we shouldn't know the name, because I think everybody agrees on that. But it is that probably, I know that on my part, and what I'm hearing from those others who are commenting as well, is that they are saying, if you're saying this is why it is important, here's my response. Because there has to be a reason why. Because you say, what is his name? That has to be important. But then I would respond by saying, why does it have to be important? Why? It's the why. Now, you might say it's important because of this. And somebody else might say it's important because of that. And somebody else might say it's important because of that. And that is really what people are responding to. Is it important? The reason that is being given, is it important? That's what people are responding to. So I just want to be balanced. I just want us to be balanced and to look at things the right way. If people are saying, if they're responding, it's because they hear you saying, we have to change something. Your message seems to suggest we need to change something. Exactly what we need to change. Is it the way we pronounce the name? Is it that we have been saying God and we now need to say Yahweh? What is it that we should gather from your message? That's the question. And that's what people are trying to respond to. So they're responding to the ideas that they perceive that you seem to be saying And that is why they're responding like this. And maybe it's not even what you are saying, it's what we understand people have been saying about this over time, because we're having a comprehensive discussion, not just focused on the one thing. So it's not fair. It's not fair. But whenever somebody says you need to do this way, then I would say why? Because I'm not just going to get up and blindly follow something for no reason. I need to know why. And if it's a good reason, then I will agree. And if I don't think it's a good reason, I won't agree. So that is what is the issue. Just to clarify that. So I'm sorry to butt in, Brother Ian, but I wanted to clarify that. So Ian, then Ayayi, and then Sister Diane.
Thank you very much. I think the timing is perfect, Brother David, because based on what you have said and what Brother Dylan has said before, my comments that I have written down here are quite, I think, congruous, or you would say, in agreement, or it follows through. I want to start out by saying that God, there are many appellations to God in the scripture. There are many names that he's called. In the Old Testament, he's called several names, and that was established before. Adonai, Jehovah, Yahweh, all of these names, or even Elohim, he was called, and Baal was called Elohim as well. So we know that there are several names that were given to God in the Old Scripture, in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, Jesus is called several names too, including a name that no one knows. Revelation 19 verse 16, it also says, on his vesture is written a name, Kings of Kings and Lord of Lords. So he has a name, and in Matthew 1 verse 23, it's also said that his name is Emmanuel. So there are several names in Romans 8 verse 15. And to Brother Dylan's point about not being about fear and all the rest of it, Romans 8 and verse 15 says, for we have not received the spirit of bondage again to fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption, whereby we cry, Abba, Father. And that's to the point that Charles and many have made before, that in the New Testament, Jesus referred to God as the Father. In his prayer, in the way he teaches us to pray, he refers to him as Father. In John chapter 17, Brother David, you clearly stated that God, and is correct, that God has revealed, manifested the character of God. And that brings me to my next point. What
I think he got
everyone knows in a name? What's the significance of a name? Especially a name that knows but the one who has it in the Bible. It's something about an experience or about a person's character that needs to be revealed. And I think that is the most important thing. The most important thing is to identify who you're speaking to and the person you're speaking to, the character, the identity, the true identity of that person. How that affects your relationship. That is what is most important to me. So I think that in all things, so long as we know exactly who we're speaking to, I don't see there as any great importance to be calling that person by a name. I think it was Don who made the comment in the chat this morning that says, when we're addressing our father, we don't call him by his first name, especially in our culture, and I think it's even worse in the Middle Eastern culture. We don't call our fathers our parents by their first name. We refer to them as mom or dad. I grew up with a stepfather, and we know him as Papa. And up till today, I still refer to him as Papa. His name is Ishmael, but yet nobody in the district knows him as Ishmael. They know him as Baba. Down in Falmouth, where he used to work when he was younger, they know him as Tarzan or something like that. He was known as several names. And to back to Dylan's illustration this morning, he spoke about several of his peers, his friends in district back in Trinidad and Tobago, which had names which that were known by certain names, and their right names, nobody knew them, but nobody confused who they were.
And by the way,
They knew exactly who they're talking.
You're calling him by his wrong name.
His name
That's
is
true.
Ruben.
That's true. That's true. You call by my wrong name. I appreciate that.
All right. But you know who I'm talking about, though. I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. So that
I
even
appreciate
strengthens
that.
my point. You know exactly who I'm speaking about. I'm speaking about you, brother. And so we have situations like this. For example, I want to point this out too. I don't know. By studying, I got to realize that several of Jesus's disciples had the same exact name. There were two Simons, there were two Judases, I think there were, and then there was another one the two James. I don't know how many of you realize that. But Jesus didn't mix them up, and I'm sure they didn't mix up each other, even though they had the same names. So the most important thing is to identify who you're worshiping, who you're having a relationship with, and not so much the importance of calling a specific name. Yes, we know that he has that name or that name that Brother David said. We accept that. But is it important that we must address him by his name? I don't think so.
All right. Thank you, Brother Ian. Brother, is this Brother Delron? I see you want to respond, but let Brother.
Yeah.
There's a free version. That's free.
Let Brother Ayayi go ahead, and I see Brother Curtis. I've added you to the list, and Brother Tony, I'll let you come in at that point. All right. So Brother Delron, Brother Ayayi, go ahead. Brother Delron, if you want to say something, let me just.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just gonna say, yes, I understand. By the anyone, that's the point there. Also, and I agree, and I want to just make sure that clear, I agree with all this thing. I wanna also would like probably to have suggest people if they could speak on the position that I put forward. I know Brother David explained that, and that's one thing that I am that the approach that I'm taking with this is it's a good talking point as I interact with people. Is not just to be for me, because I know it's a good talking point. Then I cannot sit and I can't. It's hard for me now to say, oh, it doesn't matter to me. No, let me be clear. It's not that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter like pronunciation and I agree with that. But now, to me, there is a point of importance now because I am able to interact and meet people. Okay, all right. I'm able to now bear a witness that I could have never done had I not known this. Had I not realized that the name and these things, now it plays an important role. So now as I use it and address and I use it in my witness and I'm seeing the benefits of it, I can't then say, no, it doesn't matter. Or if someone approached me and they are speaking in a certain way, and I can't say, well, it doesn't matter what name it is, blah, blah. I meet them where they are and we have a conversation. And my conversation is not to sway them to thinking that it doesn't matter. It's just for us to have that, it's to spread that gospel, sow the seed, see what's their position, move them away from there. What if they are in a legalistic position, to hopefully sway them into entering into that freedom that I also enjoy in the Son. And that's what it is for me. And that's how important it is for me. And that's just the comment I have to say.
Okay, Brother Delron. Brother Ayayi, go ahead.
Thank you, Brother David. First, I wanted to say that in future, when somebody is presenting and we all know that even if we don't agree with the person, please let's give him time or let's be patient so that the person can finish his topic before we started jumping into it. I realize it can, like by doing so, like just interrupting the person, trying to talk immediately, the person can be derouted and not go to the end of the thing he wants to present. And I think that was the case this morning. And I think it disturbed a little bit, if not much, the topic. Now, coming to the theme, I don't know if this is the okay. Now that Brother Delron explained that is not about pronunciation, I think no one in this group has a problem with that. But the only thing I've seen in the past is like people saying that you cannot say God or you cannot say Jesus. you have to say Yeshua, or you have to say this or that, or Yahuwah, or growing up in my mother tongue. And I think the problem is probably with English speaking people. I don't know. In my mother tongue, there is no problem with the name of God. In my mother tongue is Yehovah. So, and Jesus is Yesu. So, and I think I'm a little bit closer. I don't know if the problem is with the English language or English speaking people. But again, it's good, like Sister Diane said, well, it's good to know his name for sure. And I don't go to my dad and call his name. I call him Papa, is what I do. By the way, one time, this is a short testimony, I got lost. I left my village going to my aunt's house. I got lost and I ended up very far away from my village. And an old lady found me and she asked the name of my mom. I didn't know the name of my mom then. I was little, but I told her that my mom is Mama, because everybody used to call my mom Mama. I don't know, maybe I was 5 years old, but I didn't know the name of my mother. So I said, my mom, her name is Mama. And the lady said, okay, what does your mom do? And I told her what my mom does. And you know what, Brother David? She told me, I know your mother, so I will bring you back to your mother. So it was very interesting for me and it gives me comfort. But even if I have known the real name of my mother, I'm telling you, Brother David, there is no way that woman will know my mother, because no one in that village knew the real name of my mother. Everybody called her Mama Avoto because she sells clothes. So it's what is added to Mama. So I'm saying it's interesting. And when I'm thinking back to those things, when we come to God, we know his name, but he is our Father. And this is the most important thing for me. I know he's Yehovah, Yahweh, and so on. But again, a relationship also is very important, because I know some people knew his name in the past, but they didn't have that relationship with him. And is where we have to go, and or we try to attain that we have this relationship with our Father which is in heaven. And I'm saying again, if it's about the pronunciation, because I heard people say, well, don't say Jesus because Jesus is pagan. I'm saying that God, the God we worship, is not an ethnic God. He is not a tribal God or a tribal chief. He is our Father in heaven.
Amen.
And there is no language that our Heavenly Father doesn't understand. And I'm sure if the Lord will reveal, if God, Yahweh, will reveal himself to me, probably he will reveal himself to me in not Hebrew language, because I don't understand Hebrew. So that's the point I want to make. Thank you.
All right, brother. Thank you very much. Sister Charmaine, I see you. I put you on the list. Yeah, that's very interesting. I like your practical story there, because it was interesting, because it does make a good point that I won't emphasize, but I think we can all understand. Sister Diane, then Brother Reggie. Brother Tony says he has a short question to us. I'm just going to let him go ahead, since he said it's very short. Brother Tony, I hope it won't. If it requires an answer, we're going to pass on, because we're not going to take Sister Diane out of her spot.
Brother Delron, I just have two questions. Do you consider yourself a Christian?
All right, you better wait, Brother Tony, because he will have to respond. So let me let Sister Diane go ahead.
Brother David, can you hear me? Because you know my internet's shaky.
Hearing you loud and clear, Sister Diane.
Okay, I just wanted to address what you said about the Black Americans, being that I'm one. Having
It's not Black
to
Americans,
deal
it's Black people. They're in Jamaica too.
Black people, I know, but I know the ones you're talking about, and I have to explain that I understand where they're coming from. The reason, and I just saw a video this afternoon on this very subject. Why are they going back to Africa? Why are they going back to ancestral roots? Why are they going back? Why are they doing voodoo? Why are they going back to that stuff? Because the way Christianity, the fakeness of Christianity, which has not been the true gospel of Jesus Christ, has been given, it has not benefited them to the point of the kingdom of God. It has not. And as a result of the sham and all the things that they've seen, especially in this generation of not being church, I don't want to say churchgoers, but you know, this is a generation of young people who don't know God, who have not been raised with any kind of semblance of God. And what they see in Christianity is such hypocrisy. And I'm not just saying the hypocrisy of seeing their parents not doing right. The whole sham of Christianity with these mega churches and these pastors in a neighborhood where poverty's all around them and the churches are mega big and people are driving into neighborhoods. Adventists do that too, driving into neighborhoods from outside the neighborhood and doing nothing for the people around them. That's every church that does that pretty much. So they see this and they're like, well, what benefit has this done for me? Even if I need them, they don't help. You know, they don't do anything but spend money on big Ephesus instead of community services. Because, you know, we're supposed to help the poor, not only just the salvation or the government. The church is supposed to help the poor, and they don't. So these people see this and they say, well, these people done took my name, they done took my language, they done took my religion, they took everything from me and gave me this in exchange: a new name, a new God, a new everything, a new way. Everything was changed. Well, I might as well go back to where I started. That's the reason they're being pushed in that direction. So for me to help them, the Father and the Son, the truth about the Father and the Son is the most blessed part of the gospel that I've ever known. That I can just say, oh, you just got to believe on Jesus. Now it's not that at all. And then I can address them personally. I get what you're saying about Christianity. That's not truly what Jesus came to give us, is what you're seeing today. So that's the reason they're in that. And it's a shame. And the church is going to be judged because of this. It's the church's fault that they're not coming to Christ, because he said, if I be lifted up, I'll draw all men. Not if preachers get rich and preachers do that. So I just want to say in their defense, not that I'm condoning the behavior, because I don't, obviously, but I understand why they're in that situation. I have a book that says how to make a slave. There's a book, it's like a rule book on how to make a slave. Make him a Christian. Okay, you go to Africa and you say, look, you either gonna, just like the Muslims, and see, Deron made a point about Christianity being synonymous with Catholicism, because that's pretty much what you get when you get so-called Christianity, especially on the continent of Africa. You take Islam, you either take it or you're gonna get the sword. Christianity did the same thing over there. They didn't come with the glorious gospel, the true gospel of Jesus Christ. Look, you take this book, you pray to this fake image that we're giving you. We're going to take away your images. Matter of fact, your images are wrong, but we're going to give you some images in its place, and that's right. Look at the foolishness of that. So that's what I've come to understand when talking to people who have this idea of why they're sick of Christianity and they don't accept it. And it's a shame, because I really want people to understand the truth, but that hurts me to know that this whole situation that was supposed to help all of us has been so corrupted that it hasn't helped. And now it's pushing all these people away from God. And that's the work of the devil. So I just wanted to say that.
Understood, Sister Diane. I think we are pretty much aware of the issues. And I just want to say one thing. Let me see. I see Delron But let's go to Brother Reggie, Brother Tony, Sister Sharmin, and I see Kerry wants to say something as well. But the thing is, you know, the thing is, you know, I think of two quotations that I'll just quote. One of them says, "If the blind lead the blind, both will fall into the ditch." I wish it was just the first blind that would drop in the ditch, but the second blind is going to fall into the ditch. So I sympathize with people of my race. I understand what happened, but it doesn't make them any less lost if they turn to foolish ways. That's a tragedy, you know. Like somebody said, an eye for an eye just makes the whole world blind. It's kind of like not directly related, but it's kind of along the same kind of line. Brother Reggie.
And you can take your time if someone else needed to go before me. Can you hear me clearly?
I'm muted, Brother David.
I said there are a couple of people in line,
Can
but
you hear me clearly?
you are in and out, but we can hear you. I'm saying there are a couple of other people, but you are next in line.
Okay. Well, first of all, I wanted to say to Brother Delron, even though I'm not of the same persuasion, I want to thank you for having the courage to speak on what you believe from your heart. You know, I'm not the Lord. I believe your heart is honest, and I pray that the Lord will continue to bless you, whether He leads you further in your research or He leads you away from it. Continue to trust Him, and you'll see Him face to face one day. The next thing I wanted to comment, and several other people already commented on it, so I don't want to go over that. But I forget what brother it was. He mentioned the scripture in 1 Corinthians 13 and 14 about the tongues. And if we go back to the first century, the reason why the gift of tongues was given was because the apostles, along with the other people who were in that room, they only basically knew Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic, and I forget the other language, only 4 languages. So when Paul says, if a person speaks an unknown tongue, well, if you came from North Africa or China, it's an unknown tongue. That's what Paul is speaking about. So that's the reason why the gift of speaking in different languages was given by the Spirit of Christ, so that the doctrine of Christ could go out. And if, you know, you were speaking in an unknown tongue, you know, prophetic tongue, or, you know, something like that, then it wouldn't benefit anyone. And, you know, if we all were Spanish speaking people and then someone spoke French, you know, it wouldn't benefit to speak French. So I believe that example doesn't quite fit with what Brother Delron has been talking about. Another thing is characters is something that can't be seen. So names are given to spirits, and we are human spirits. So in order to identify Brother David or Brother Tony or Sister Diane, a name has to be given to that character, i.e., a spirit, a human spirit. You know, we're created in the image of God, so we're not just humans, but we're human spirits, because God is a spirit. So, you know, that's why names are given to humans, because, you know, you see this house that we're in. You see the flesh, you see the eyes, but the person, you can't see them. So a name has to be given to that person so you can identify them.
We lost you, brother Reggie.
You know, another reason why God, and this, I have 2 more points. Another reason why God gave, you know, he told them, well, you know, I am who I am Yahweh, I am Jehovah. or however else, others have learned, his proper pronunciation was to identify him as a God who's leading Israel amongst a plethora of lowercase gods. Where did you lose me at? What point? What point did you lose me at? Are you hearing me?
You are very garbled. Very garbled.
Can you hear me now?
Hearing you now.
At what point did you lose me?
Take
Because
your
I only
video
had
off.
2 points after that.
Yeah.
Brother Reggie,
Right.
take your video off to improve your bandwidth, please.
But Ian is saying if you take off your video, it might improve your bandwidth so that we can hear you better.
All right. At what point did you lose me?
I heard you say that we have you had 2 other points to make.
Okay. The last point was God. I believe God gave his name was for the reason of identifying him as the God of the Jews. Hold on for a second, Ellen. To identify him as the God of the Jews amongst a plethora of gods. And personality and character is of prime real estate. And I believe, that this is the heart or the essence of what God wants his people to understand is encompassed in the name, because the name is the psyche or the personality or the character or the actual efficacy, the actual quality, the actual essence of a soul, of a spirit. It is who that person is, and the name is just a definition of what the person is or who the person is. So, that's why I believe, it isn't an issue that, how can I say without saying that it isn't important? I guess what I'm really trying to say is if God, who is the inventor of language, God who sees the thoughts and the motives of people, he also said in the Old Testament that I will save, I forget if it's in Isaiah, I will save this nation who doesn't even know my name. So it's the heart of the person, if they're willing to surrender to this God, to receive of him, then knowing his actual name isn't so important, because his name or his character through his son will be in those people at the very last days. And that's just my take on it.
Okay, thank you, Brother Reggie. Yeah, I appreciate those thoughts. One or two interesting things that yeah, added to the thoughts. I appreciate it. Brother Tony, go ahead and ask your questions now. Sorry to hold you so long, but we just have to do it all.
Brother David, let Brother Tony ask his question later. I'm in the
Yes.
tunnel and I'm in some traffic. I might get disconnected, so I won't be able to answer clearly. So once I come
Okay,
here, I would let him know, and you can just bring him back on, okay?
All right, Brother Delvan.
All right.
So
All right.
hang on, Brother Tony. Sister Charmaine, you go ahead.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to say that whenever we're discussing things and it's very easy to be distracted, Christ should always be in the center of everything we discuss. This is something which I'm trying to tell myself always, because it's very easy to be distracted by personal opinion, politics, or so on. I think that Delron's point was very clear. He is interacting with his immediate environment and the needs that he sees there. And I think that in general, we are all understanding his point of view, but there is a bigger conversation here. And the way I see this is that the world right now is becoming so open and everybody is so desperate for their own identity. And minorities, especially the Black race, which I'm also part of course, they're Black people, other repressed minorities are all trying to get recognition. And you see this in Black Lives Matter, you see it in the Arab Springs, but these are all political movements which remove the focus of an individual away from God and to something very earthly and very political. But I think this is when people are dying for an identity, and perhaps therefore they want to see the identity of other people as well. This is my identity. I'm a Black Lives Matter girl, and what's yours? And you have to accept my identity. You have to. In this group, I'd like to say we're all family, and we're the family of God. So maybe within this group, it's less important to say what God's name is. If Diane wants to say Yahshua and I want to say God, we understand each other because we understand him. Many of us have come out of the SDA church, and I'm sure many people have been asked, oh, so you're in a new group. Well, what's the name of your group? What do you call yourselves? And before I even understood that other people in this group were rejecting having a name, I also didn't want to have a name. I don't want to be categorized as anything except a child of God. But I think that society is doing the same to God now, and this is perhaps what Delron is also experiencing. They're trying to force an identity and a name onto God as if giving him a name is the ultimate. But I'm wondering, now getting back to Christ and God being central, what if God has been unclear about his name? Because he doesn't want us to worship his name. He doesn't show us his face. There are all these depictions of what Jesus, well, not Jesus so much, but God looks like. We don't know what he looks like, because perhaps we as humans would be so distracted by the name, as we know some so-called Christian groups do, or as other Christian groups do, or even other religions, you have to worship a deity that looks like this. When God actually wants us to understand his principles, understand his heart, understand his character, and that we follow those things rather than getting hung up by a name or an image. I'm almost done because I had a long time to wait, so a lot of time to think.
You take your time, because I find what you're saying very, very thought-provoking.
Thank you. I wonder if, as human beings, we value our intellect too highly. If we were told God's name, if he was to say, this is my name, would we even understand it? It's like trying to say, imagine a musical note that you have never heard. Imagine a color that you have never seen. Imagine the taste of a fruit you have never tasted. You don't know it. It's not in your realm of understanding. God. So
Sorry,
God.
okay, I see that you're back. All right, so after Shami.
Okay, so I'm just wondering if God has also kept certain parts of his identity unclear, because that was for him not as yet important, because he knows what we are like. Last thing. When we get to heaven, I have 3 quick short texts. Revelation 2 verse 17, he that has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To him that overcometh, I will give to eat of the hidden manna. Who knows what that tastes like? And I will give him a white stone, and in that stone is written a new name that no one knows. So my name is not important. I'm waiting for that name that's on my stone. Then Revelation 14:1. Then I looked, and there before me was the Lamb standing on Mount Zion. 144,000 heard the name of his Father. The Father, but we don't know what his name is. He is the Father. He has a name, but we don't know the name yet. We'll know it there. And the last one, I think that when God created the world through his Son, he had such intimacy with Adam and Eve. They lost this, and it broke the relationship. And the whole Bible is just talking about how God and his Son are working so hard to regain that relationship. In the beginning of the Bible, they had it. They lost it. At the end of the Bible, Revelation 22:4, and they shall see his face, and his name shall be in their foreheads. Thanks. That's all I have to say.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I think I really appreciated those thoughts, Sister Charmaine. Really, really thought provoking, and I like especially because you
Amen.
focus your attention on Jesus, and I think that's really the bottom line when we're having this discussion.
Amen.
Kerry, Delron, are you out of the tunnel?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay, go ahead, Brother Tony, and then Sister Kerry will have the other point. Brother Sam, I don't know if you're going to say something, but you're the after Sister Kerry. Go ahead, Brother Tony, and then I'll take Brother Sam, probably the last official comment before we close the meeting. We can discuss afterwards, talk a bit, but I'm going to close after Brother Sam. Go ahead, Brother Tony.
Yeah, just a quick question. Something that was says is this morning about, things being done in the name of Christianity. So do you think that it's wrong to be labeled as a Christian? And one more thing, what's the rest of the issue? Because it sounds like it's just more than just getting the name of God right. It sounds like it's something more to it. So, I'm just trying to find out what's the real issue here.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
Brother Delron, especially the second question. Can you just put your finger on it in a couple of sentences so it's very clear? Anyway, go ahead.
All right. I think how I could make this clear is easy by just referring to what Sister Deanne said. And after Sister Deanne spoke, I was trying to come in because she brought something to my attention that makes me realize that my response was going to be, I don't think that this was the right platform for me to make that presentation, because I am dealing with things in my current environment, whereas there is a situation that shouldn't be overlooked and need to be highlighted amongst the young Black people. And that's something I'm dealing with on a regular daily basis. And so with that, that's what's upon my mind, and I just presented it on the group. But obviously, everybody here are in different parts of the world. They have their own things they're dealing with. My importance is not your importance. When you look at how Paul operated, when you're in Rome, you do like the Rome. You meet everyone differently. In Antioch, you talk to them differently. You would have you won't carry this. Yes, the main and center, the center theme of everything is the same. Eyes on Christ, but there's a way how he would go about interacting with each one and dealing with the specific issues that they are facing with at the current moment, right? And that's the situation that I am in right now, and it's real issues. These are real issues, and not to be overlooked. Black people are searching for identity. They have been scarred by the bitterness of what has occurred under the name of Christianity. I'm not saying to my brother Tony here that it's against the thing to call to be labeled a Christian. No, what I said was, when I'm with a Christian, I'll be a Christian, right? When I'm with, like a Paul said, if I'm with someone else, I must be adaptable. So I must be all things to all men, right? And that's what it is about. And with that, it's the issue is, I think, what if you backtrack what Deanne said, that is the whole underlying issue on the position that I took. Because had I continued in it, that's the direction I was going. But I realized that it's probably not thing to it's probably not the correct platform to lay that out on this group. But I do appreciate doing it here because I got some good feedback from everyone, and I'm able now to see and to see the receptive how it's receptive on certain platforms. So I'll know that, okay, I'm not gonna present to a group, like I'll do it to people who I know will receive it and need it at that moment and that current time. So it was very good to do things and give the test run, and I appreciate the feedback and the love that I got from everyone here, and the air that was lended. But I think I would stand on that. It's not an issue of non-importance. And I think that's the thing that for me, it is an important issue because something that I see and we are experiencing here currently. where there's a big exodus of individuals. Also, Sister Charmaine, who just came on, I think she, I agree with her 100% too. Also, with that approach, and that was wonderful too. I have to definitely go back and look at the recording and get some of the jewels that she was dropping also. But in that, people are scarred. We can't act like I can't act like Brother Tony. Christianity is the answer. And that's what I was saying this morning when I said the believer doesn't become a Christian, the believer becomes part of a family. Because a lot of people are scarred in my environment, are scarred by Christianity. So what if I don't introduce them to Christianity, but I introduce them to a family where they are wanted, where they are loved by the Father and His Son, and what joy and freedom that would give them, right? And that is how I approach it, the situation. That's my analysis.
Yeah, I mean, well, we know that Satan counterfeits everything, but Christianity is pointing to Christ, though. True Christianity is centered around Christ.
Yeah, no, you are with what you are saying there. Yes, you say true Christianity centered around Christ. Now, my question to you is, how are you going to use that for someone who don't want to get anything about Christianity? How are you going to then implement that? How would you lay that out then?
Well, that's a good question. But see, you just give them what the scriptures say. See, to me, it sounds like it's something more to the story. It almost, I mean, because I've talked to a couple of brothers that kind of swayed to the Hebrew Israelite, and then they start saying that they couldn't call God God no more. They couldn't use the name Jesus. They had to use Yahuwah, Yahshua, Yahweh. I'm just trying to find out, is it more to this story on that line that, getting away from Christianity and getting towards that platform, you think?
No, I'm very clear when I speak on that, so I don't know why that is still also unquestioned on the table. I am very clear about that, so I don't think we need to pull teeth to see where I stand in that issue. What I said is what I said, and that's where I stand. There's nothing else to it. There's no trickery here. I speak on my experience and my interactions, and that's just how and that's what I relate. And in present that I presented. And like I said, it's definitely some new light to me, and in seeing it, and people don't want to hear about, but after they have been used and abused by a system or by a church that goes under the label that goes under a label of, and I would use the word false Christianity, they don't want to hear about Christianity. They don't want to hear it because they have already made up their mind. So how could I reach them? Because they still need to be reached. I don't then go and force them and say, well, the scripture says Christian. No, I will speak the truth to the individual. And how do I do that? I must invite them to a relationship. In a relationship, it's a family. And being part of that family is what it's about. And I apologize for how your church mistreated you. I have a friend who told me that the Catholic Church owes him repatriation. For all the years of lying to him. That's what he said. The Catholic Church owes him repatriation. And it's like people have it is a real live thing going on here, and there's a mass exodus into this African or black people looking for identity. And so, how could I now, as a young person who reach people, put up a wave the banner high of Prince Emmanuel, and show him that he loves you, and he and is not what you have experienced is more than that. There's hope, and I believe that there's hope. And in so doing, I found it as I was looking into the topic. I'm not going to go back and restate everything I said, but that's the grounds on which my presentation is definitely built on what Sister Deanne had said, and what Sister Sharman has also emphasized on. It is true.
Okay. All right. Well, God bless you, brother. We really appreciate it, man.
All right, man. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Brother Tony. Thank you, Brother Delron. I see you, Brother Ray. You will have the last point. But I have Kerry, and then I have I have Brother Sam, and then I have Ray, and then we'll close at that. It's long overdue. We're going to close. So who wants to leave can leave, and then who wants to continue can continue. But it's in this order: Sister Kerry, Brother Sam, then Brother Ray.
Good night, good, well, evening or morning, anybody is over some other side of the world. Um, I am I am grateful for everyone sharing because I can find something I agree with that everybody shared. I'm addressing Brother Delron. I hope I'm not mispronouncing his name. Don't be afraid of digging. I went through this phase myself. I even kept lunar Sabbath. Um, don't be afraid. When you want the truth, you are going to look. I'm just asking you to pray to God that when you're searching, He will lead you where you need to go. Because sometimes the searching can take us over and we get carried off course. I also realize that it's very sad that Black people believe that Christianity is the white man's religion. It is not. A lot of the history that we don't get is that the conquerors always adapt religions, and anything that they take up, they force on other people, whoever is dominant. It doesn't mean that it is theirs. And I don't think Black people realize that a lot of the history of Africans is covered by, as Delron said, the person who in the war gets to tell history. It's not theirs. So for Africans to be getting up and saying that we don't want this white God. God was never a racial person who just look out for one person. So he doesn't belong to any race. See? The news that he brought does not belong to any race. It belongs to all of us. It's for humanity. So it is very sad that they've taken that approach because of the evil that was done in the past. I want you to keep searching because God will lead you into truth. If truth is what you want to find, you will find it. The Bible says, seek and you shall find. I went through it. I am now informed in a different way about God's name. I use several incidents to inform me. One is Exodus 34, verse 5 to 6. When God was revealing his name to Moses, he did not tell him a word. Even what he told Israel, that I am who I am, it is not a name as we think. It is something that we can relate to. He told Moses his character. The Lord God, merciful and gracious, long suffering and abundant in goodness and truth. He told us his nature. And I think this is the name that God wants us to know about him, as David was presenting today. He wants us to know who he is because his identity has been covered in lies. He has been misrepresented and misunderstood, and Jesus came here to reveal his Father to us. So that is the name that I focus on now. Also, look at the fact that the Bible asks, who can make a clean out of an unclean thing? This is the thing that makes God God. Nobody else can do that. And what makes clean out of unclean? His spirit, the purity of his spirit, the goodness of his spirit. It goes back to the name he revealed to Moses. This is what he wants us to know. I also use the incident in Acts 19. The Jewish exorcists were trying to cast out a demon out of a man. And they used Jesus' name, just like how they hear the disciples use Jesus' name. And the demon said, Jesus I know and Paul I know, but who are you? And he thrashed them. So even though they may have the correct name of Jesus, because they would have known it, they were Jews, it did not bring any result to them because they had no relationship with God. They did not know him. And so there was no power in their words. So God's name, or Jesus' name, is beyond just a word. It is the relationship, the connection of the spirit to him. It is more than that. The last thing I use to inform my judgment about God's name is my own personal experience. I remember shortly after I've gone through this process of the name thing, I was even shying away from saying the word Jesus, because to me it's just like my name. When people call my name, whether it's Carrie Ann, I can identify with that. I was saying to myself, but God must have a name and Jesus must have a proper name. And I remember one day I felt this kind of depression come over me. I struggled with depression from I was a teenager. I was diagnosed with chronic depression. I was even on meds. And from time to time, the bouts of it would come back and attack me. And this time it was very bad. It was so bad that even though I knew that righteousness is by faith and all of that knowledge, I was so downcasted that if there was a cliff, I could just jump over it. And I remember this brother, ironically, he doesn't believe in righteousness by faith, but he was encouraging me to I reached out on WhatsApp because I didn't know what to do. I felt so down. And this brother said to me, call on Jesus' name. And I was so down, I couldn't even pray. I don't know if you understand that kind of depression. I don't know if you've ever felt it. It is heavy, a heaviness that has no word to describe. And all I could utter was Jesus, because I don't know his name, honestly, because we can speculate. One thing I took away from even the tetragrammaton of God's name is that nobody knows what it really is or where the vowels are supposed to be placed. So you don't know if the pronunciation you're using is correct. But the only name I know is Jesus. And I called, that word came out of my mouth, and instantly this feeling came over me, this covering of a presence, and wiped the depression that was in me like a slate, like somebody took their hand and cleared a cupboard top. I don't even remember what I was thinking about. The feeling was completely gone, and I'm saying to myself, God gave me that experience for a reason. He wanted me to know that, look here, I know you and you know me. My name don't matter. Whatever you call me, I know that I am the one you are talking to. And that that experience has never left me. And I have countless other experiences where I'm talking to God and he tells me to speak and he responds to me and things work. I know God, if it was important for us to know his name, he would have preserved it in some way. Just like how he planted information about his son in every book in the Bible. It is a mystery to me how God planted his son in every chapter, every book in this Bible. If you look carefully, his son is in every one of them. And that's why when he came here on earth, he could tell who he was because God took great care to preserve his identity in that book and nobody can erase it out of it. And so that is what I want you to know, Darana. Look here, God knows your heart. Don't be afraid to share what you know because we're all on a journey and we're going to grow and develop from strength to strength. What I know now, I do not know years ago. It makes me a stronger and better Christian. Don't be afraid to share, don't be afraid to talk, but don't get caught up in the search because that can lead you astray. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kerry. Thank you, Kerry. It's a beautiful note on which to, we're not quite finished yet. We have a couple of other people, but I really, that personal experience is, well, I don't have any comment, no words.
I just want to say there are so many brothers and sisters that spoke this afternoon that everyone need to get a great and plenty amen and hallelujah. But this lady that just spoke a while ago, I'm telling you, I could not contain myself. I have to give her thumbs up and I have to give her 100 amen and hallelujah. Praise the Lord.
All right, Brother Arthur, we forgive you. You spoke out of turn, but we forgive you. Brother Sam, it's your time.
I begin to practice what I try to preach. I don't want to be selfish.
Very well done, Brother Sam. Very well done. You have done this evening.
Yeah, well, I'm striving to be. My aim is to fit in, but sometimes I won't. But the lady just spoke. What was her name? Karen?
Yes, Sister Carrie Ann.
I went through the same thing. I got so last time I think I spoke about that, I got so carried away because I was searching for my God. But I never disliked the name of Jesus because as a boy, my mother told me about Jesus and oh, how he loves me. And as a boy coming up, I really fell in love with you. Even though I left him, I left my first love, I always had that place in my heart for Jesus. And when things go down and things go wrong, I call on the name of Jesus. And that is the reason why I always say we must turn our eyes. What I mean, we must walk hand in hand with him every day. What a name. I just love that name, Jesus. I know some people don't like it. That's their problem, not mine. But I love it. I love it. For God so loved the world that he gave Jesus, his only begotten son. And when I think about Jesus, I think about my Father. And it brings love to my heart. I grew up basically as a Baptist, and I found the Sabbath, and I became a Seventh-day Adventist. And I consider myself still a Seventh-day Adventist. And that's why I get a little upset when this group go crazy down in Adventists. Because that's what I used to be. I was one until last September before I changed my belief, and they haven't put me out of church yet. But I still have so many friends in the Adventist church, and I have so many people that I love. And think about my spiritual parents. They rested in Jesus now. Think about mother and all the churches they started Bible studying. And I was with her. I was her pitch man. I was a song director. I was her everything. And she built churches, 70 Adventist churches. I found fault in my church before I found about the one God. But I did it myself. I was searching for God because I felt empty. I was laying in the bed all the time. I'm in pain. I'm on this morphine. I have friends of mine say, you have so much faith in Jesus, why you laying there in pain? I said, he's trying to tell me something. And he did. He told me who his father was. And I want to thank you. I want to thank Brother David and Brother Howard and the two young men in Australia, because I listened to those tapes over and over again until I realized that I had a father. And do you know how much pressure that took off my back? Knowing that I don't have to be an excellent Seventh-day Adventist waiting for Jesus, praying that he come to my name and blot all my sins out while he's in the holy place. I'm trying to be right, but I'm doing something wrong, and at that time, I'm lost. That's the way I used to believe, but I don't believe that no more. I'm so thankful for my God who rescued me and brought me into this marvelous light. Brother David said, God is light. I know God is love, but I'm so thankful for the light so I can see my way home. If each one of us will keep our eyes on Jesus, no one else but Jesus, all the problems, all the bigoting we go through each day will go away. I'm so thankful for the gentleman that brought this message this morning, because it made all of us think, and we must be thinking people. God talked to our mind and our brain. We must think we can listen to him. And everybody have different opinions because we all come from different backgrounds. We all are different. I grew up with segregation real bad in Georgia. And I don't like to tell people that what I went through, but I went through a lot. Being a black boy, I mean a black boy with nappy hair in Georgia. But I'm so thankful that I found Jesus. No, I got it wrong. I'm so thankful that Jesus found me through my mother. My mother was a Christian woman. I lost my father when I was a little boy, so I never really had a father. And you know how it is to get a father now? I'm adopted into the family of God. I have a daddy, like Brother David said. I'm with you there, Brother David. I have a daddy. Something I never had before. You don't know the feeling of that when you don't have one. Now, see, Brother David had a wonderful daddy, a preaching daddy, a daddy that showed him love. I didn't have that, but I had a mother. Thank God for the mothers. I just want to end and say this. Let us keep our eyes on Jesus, my friend, my family. Let us look in his dear face. And all our problems that we have will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. Jesus is coming soon. Are you ready? Are you able to look up and say, "This is my God, and I have been waiting for it"? I can't wait to that day when I can get out of this bed, get my new body, and shout all over this house. On my way to holy Jerusalem. Thank you, my family, for bearing with my rapping. I'm a big talker. I love everyone. God bless you all. Keep me in your prayers.
All right, Brother Sam. Thank you. God bless you. And you gave us a mouthful, but it was a good mouthful. Brother Beacon, I see you. Brother Ray is going to share. I'm going to close the meeting and then you speak afterwards because I did say we would end after Brother Ray, so I want to speak to my words. So Brother Ray, and then we'll close and then you go ahead, Brother Beacon.
Yeah, there was a question that was asked here, going back to the topic, and praise God for what He has done to Sam's life and Sam's life. But anyway, I remember that Daniel Clayton did a beautiful presentation, and he left Thursday because we wanted him to come back with another presentation, your son. He talked about the topics of all the religions, what they encompass, what they believed, and whatnot. And he came up to Christianity. And I realized that uh, all of these denominations, they hold on to what they believe in as denominated groups. And the brother asked, how would you explain to these other brothers that I'm trying to work with, Christianity? They want to give it another name. They want to call it God's family. Well, I got news. God's family, the Christianity is all about those that stand the Bible alone and not with denominational teachings or not with anyone. Christianity is all about seeking truth as for hidden treasures. Those are Christians. And that word, I think it's derived, I don't know if I'm right, it's derived from the word Christ. Those that are followers of the word of God, of the word of Christ. So Christ came to represent his Father here on earth, to take us to the place where man failed. He became out the second Adam. So what I'm trying to say to the brothers, when I ask them, what is a Christian? A Christian is not because you're a Pentecostal, not because you're a Seventh-day Adventist, not because you're Jehovah's Witness, or whatever you are. That does not make you a Christian. Like Brother Daniel Clayton was saying, if you want to know what a Christian is all about, go back to the beginning. And that's stuck in my mind like a hot iron, So anytime I question myself, I go back to the beginning. So Christians are those that are followers of Christ. Those are the family of Christ. It's not the restoration ministry. Those are Christians. It's not the Emad, all these Revelation. For that's not the Christian. No, Christian is all of us who follow the word of God and get together as a family. Now, this is what makes a family. So I don't know. There's no way one can change the name Christian, God's followers, into the name family, because first you have to be a Christian. You have to be a diligent student of the word of God and go by what He teaches us through His Spirit. So that's Christianity in my way. My view. Somebody asked me, because I was asked by a Muslim last week. He says, but you're a Christian, because Christians believe in the Trinity and all kinds of things. I said, yes, you haven't met a Christian. I'm a Bible student, which is very different than giving me a branding me as a person that's a Christian that belongs to a denominated group. No, that's not what Christianity is all about. And you know what? I said, that's interesting. I never heard that before. I said, yes. If you are a real Muslim, you leave the mosque, you leave everything you got, and you go back to the beginning to your books and find out. Find out if what you're being taught is true or not. Don't follow no one. That's a true Muslim. And as a Christian, I left all religion to the side and I read the Bible. So I hope that explanation helps out my brother there that gave the presentation today. And I thank him for being honest with us and sharing this here. Maybe he should tell these boys to come over and join our platform, the Christian group. All right.
No. Nah.
Uh, all right. Thank you, brother Ray. You provoked me with some thoughts you gave there, but I'll keep my word and I'll shut up. We're going to close the meeting, and then we can continue the discussion afterwards if anybody has the appetite. We have been already nearly 3 hours, I think. So I think we need to close so that those who want to leave can leave, and then we can continue for those who want to continue. So thank you, everybody. I think, speaking for myself, I was blessed by everybody who shared, because I didn't agree completely with everybody, of course, but I was provoked to think by everybody who spoke. I can say this, and I hope we all get out of this conversation with still that spirit of love and unity in our hearts. We like I said, I disagree with my wife. I disagree with my children on some things, but I'll tell you that it doesn't affect our love and affection for each other, and we're a family. So I think that we can survive a little bit of disagreement on what I consider to be a fairly minor matter. So let's just bow our heads as we give our Father thanks.